Welcome, Nicole, to this crazy bunch called Thrive. It's mostly Brackpan that misbehaves. But there are people from all over. So welcome. It is really, really nice to have you. And Kans and I are so looking forward to this conversation because we know you've already been such a help to so many in our congregation, and we're enormously grateful for that. You will not believe how awesome it is to be a pastor and say there's a really good person that you could go and talk to. Who's much better at counseling than what I am. Kans is another story. She's very good at counseling. I am completely useless at it, and so it's wonderful. I think maybe just to set the scene, I'll kick off, and then Kans and I will just we'll have a conversation. We're talking mental health tonight. And so we thought maybe the best place to start is to get on the same page with regards to, when it comes to mental health, what are we actually talking about? It's a term used so widely, like it's the buzzword, but what are we actually talking about when we talk mental health?
Thank you for having me, everyone. I think the important emphasis here is health. So we speak about mental health, but what we're actually referring to is a lot of mental illness, a lot of mental struggles. So if we're speaking about mental health, we need to be focusing on what is going to keep us healthy mentally. So as much as you would look after your physical body, how are you looking after your brain? How are you looking after your nervous systems? How are you looking after yourself? Right. And I think that would probably be the focus and the emphasis of what it is that I'm going to be speaking about tonight.
Right up front, as you say that, I think there might be like a light bulb or two that's going off for people that, we have to look after our bodies. We go to gym for our bodies. We eat healthy. We have to look after our brains. Just why? Why can't they look after themselves?
Well, it's a fairly important part of our body. But in fact, as much as we look after our physical bodies, but when we become chronically stressed, when we experience the busyness of what life is, we neglect our bodies as well. So it's interesting, yes. So when I speak about we look after our physical bodies, most parents here, if your children are sick, you're taking them to the doctor. If you're sick, maybe not so much. You can sort of put it on the back burner because you've got something else that you need to do. But as much as your brain sends signals to your body sends signals to your brain. And there's that connection between the two. So that's why we need to look after our brain, because our brain is sending messages to our body, but our body is then confirming or reaffirming or going, actually, we're fine. So the brain is speaking to the body is speaking back to the brain.
And I think for many of us, we live quite disconnected lives. We assume that there is a difference, like we segregate those things and we don't integrate as people. As a follow-up to that question, in your practice and as you come into contact with people, what are you seeing the most of at the moment? What are you dealing with? Because I'm assuming that in this congregation we're a portion of that. And so it might be helpful for you to just share with us from your perspective, what are you seeing? And then also after that, a couple of strategies.
Okay. So you used the word disconnected, and it's actually the perfect word to put into play here. When I speak to you about the Polyvagal theory, we'll speak about how important engaging is for our mental health and our physical well-being. So being in a community like this is already plugging you into your mental health and keeping you mentally healthy. So that's one part. But I feel like I've lost the other part of your question.
What are you seeing the most of at the moment?
So a lot of anxiety, and a lot of anxiety that is presenting as, it's actually chronic stress, because we are disconnected, so we can't focus on what we are dealing with one by one, because there's so many things happening, and we finish one thing and it's the next thing. And chronic stress codes inside of your brain in the same way that trauma would. Okay, so those signals are then sending this disruption to the rest of your body, which starts feeling like anxiety. And then we start going into the anxiety-related disorders. So we're speaking chronic stress, we're speaking trauma, we're speaking anxiety.
What creates chronic stress?
Our really busy lives.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So we like you and I were speaking about earlier, we don't have time to unplug. We don't have time to just disconnect from all of the demands. And so we're always going from one thing to the next thing. So if I can use an example of a buck that gets chased by a lion, it ends well for the buck, not so well for the lion. But he will then go and he will lie under a tree, he'll drink water, he'll relax, he'll be in his herd, he'll feel protected for the rest of the day, and he'll actually have time to calm down. And if you watch that buck, he'd actually shake a little bit, okay? And that's his nervous system settling down. That's him calming down. And if you think about it, anything that threatens our life as we know it becomes a stress or a trauma to us. So if my boss yells at me and then I get into the car and somebody almost cuts me off and then I get a phone call from the school saying my child's done something wrong, that's 3 things. And then I go home and then I'm still worrying about my job, and then the next day something else happened. So that response actually takes 4 to 6 weeks to naturally settle down in your body for one thing. So then one thing adds onto the other, and that's where our chronic stress is coming from.
You used a word which I don't think I understood, so I'm going to just speak for everyone. Codes. You said yes. Chronic stress codes. Talk to us about that a little bit.
So it's what then happens. So our brains are neuroplastic. Okay, so that means that our brains can change. We can rewire our brains, but as much as we can rewire them in a positive way, which I will teach you, we can also rewire them in the negative way. So it's almost a priming of our brain to go into, okay, we're in danger, we're still in danger, we're still in danger. So we're constantly, that fight and flight response, that release of cortisol and adrenaline is going, okay, Nicole, you're in a stressful situation, so here's some cortisol and adrenaline. And then we're not out of it. So it goes, okay, so here's a little bit more. You're still not out of it. Here's a little bit more. And we need cortisol in our body, don't get me wrong, but too much of it becomes damaging to your actual brain.
Okay, so sort of, but now that you've positioned that, we've mentioned the word anxiety-related disorders. You mentioned to me when we were talking about this in preparation that we could almost use the term anxiety-related disorders as an umbrella, and then it kind of cascades down into a few different avenues. Would you mind unpacking that for us for a few moments?
Yes. So when we speak about anxiety, so we get anxiety-related disorders, we get mood-related disorders, and then we get a whole bunch of others, which we don't need to talk about today. So the anxiety-related disorders, the umbrella is generalized anxiety disorder, so that would be abbreviated to GAD, and the generalized anxiety is a little bit of everything. Okay, so you are really, really worked up because you need to get in your car and you don't know how you're going to get to work. And then you're really worked up because you don't really know if you're going to meet the deadline your boss has set for you. And then you're really worked up because you don't know, are you going to get your child on time? So a generalized anxiety, if I can give you it's going to sound extreme, but in a person who has generalized anxiety, this will sound like a normal thought. So I get into my car, I'm on the highway, I'm in traffic, I'm going to be late, so I'm obviously going to lose my job, and then I'm going to get fired, and then my husband isn't going to want to be with me because I don't have a job anymore, so he's going to take the kids, and then I'm going to not have anywhere to stay because the kids aren't going to want to move, and then I'm going to be homeless, and then I can't shower, so I can't go for an interview, so it is disaster, okay? And it sounds irrational out loud, but when you're thinking these thoughts, it's real.
Yeah.
And your body physically, so everybody, I want you to do this experiment. Okay, I'm going to see how mindful you all are, okay? So I want you to all hold a pretend glass in your hand, okay? I want you to all pretend to spit into it. Okay. I want you to swirl it around and look at it. Now drink it, okay? So that is my point. Your brain can't tell the difference between what is real and imagined. So there is no glass, there is no spit, but physically your body went, So if you use that example to put into perspective in your life, what if this goes wrong? What if this happens? What if something bad happens there? What if something bad happens there? Okay. Every time your body is then releasing those cortisol and adrenaline signals to the rest of your body. And that is what generalized anxiety is. It's excessively irrational thoughts. They are intrusive, they are recurring, and it's a little bit about everything.
All right.
It's crazy.
Can you talk to us about OCD?
Yes.
Which is, wait, just Kristen over there, yes.
Yes. Yeah. And if you'd like to call live examples, we'd be happy to point any out.
So OCD is quite an interesting thing because your brain also, I just want to give a disclaimer first. There are many different frameworks in psychology. There are many people who work in many different ways. There is something that works for everyone, but not everything will work for everyone. Okay, so if you don't like what I say, put it in the stuffer bucket. That's okay, all right? But OCD develops almost as a coping mechanism, okay? So those irrational thoughts that I've just spoken to you about, those become your obsessive thoughts, okay? You then develop a compulsive behavior to try and calm down those obsessive thoughts. Okay, so we do joke about it, and we have people who have all of their clothes in order of color, or we have people who have things absolutely straight, ticking lists in a box. So those are all quite normal ways to cope. They're quite normal ways, and we all have a little bit of something. Everything is on a continuum, okay? But if I can give you an example of OCD, it's a guy in America, so I can tell you all this. He had a belief, which was obviously irrational, that if these two fingers touched each other, something really bad would happen, okay? And that was his obsessive thought, that if these fingers had to touch each other, he would be responsible for what would happen, and it would be really, really bad. So he walked around with his hands like this, okay? And it just so happened that he took the trash out. The date just so happened to be the 9/11, 2001, and he then believed that these two fingers obviously touched one another, and he was the reason that the Twin Towers came down. So now he walks around like that. Okay, so OCD is not impossible to treat. It is difficult to treat because it becomes intrusive in your everyday life. Some people in America, a couple got divorced because it took his wife 4 hours every day to leave the house because she kept checking and rechecking, is the door locked, is this done? So it gets to a point of becoming so severe that it actually interrupts your everyday functioning.
So on that, when OCD becomes interruptive to your life, do you seek help then or before then?
So it starts quite subtly, okay? And if you're not in tune with your mental health, if you're not in tune with what's going on because you're so busy all the time, you may miss that spot. But if any of you, so COVID was a very good example of this. People started becoming quite obsessive about things that we couldn't control. COVID was awful because it put us in the most stressful situation the entire world had been in, and it also took away every single one of our coping mechanisms. So a lot of people then had sort of that washing OCD, their hands would crack. It's never too late to look for help. So if you feel like anything is a problem in your life, so even if it feels like it is a 10% problem in your life, get it sorted out. Okay, so look for help. It doesn't have to be the extreme that you're walking around like that, but it can be where you start going, do you know what, I feel like this is taking up too much, then get help.
Very good. You mentioned COVID, and I think that one of the main reasons for us wanting to do mental health as a hot topic is because we are seeing an increase in people struggling, and obviously we believe, it's because of, some of it's because of COVID and everything that happened during COVID, and the trauma of COVID and the PTSD of COVID. Could you talk to us a bit about the trauma of that period, what some of the signs might be of PTSD, if we might have some, I know for me, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm like, no, we didn't, that never happened. Because there was a lot of trauma around that time. So just talk to us about that and perhaps how come we're seeing almost a delay. Yeah.
It's quite interesting because when COVID hit and shutdown happened and everything, the doctors at the practice that I work at, they said, "Oh, you're going to be so busy," and I said, "I'm not going to be busy now. It's going to be later," because initially we were still finding our feet. But again, remember I said to you that anything that threatens your life as you know it becomes that stressor. So many people didn't know were they going to have a job. Their hours were cut, their pay was cut, and one of the biggest things is our social connection was taken away. So we didn't have the opportunity to connect with one another. In extreme cases, we weren't even able to have a normal funeral. We weren't able to say goodbye to people. And that's where this level of stress and anxiety is coming from. So we also mirror each other's nervous systems. So if I'm calm and I walk into a room of people that have quite disrupted nervous systems and I stay comfortable in my calm nervous system, you will start mirroring mine. But if you walk around and just be curious about the rooms that you're entering into, and you'll sort of start feeling, oh, like this feels like now I'm panicked, so I wasn't really feeling panicking. And it's because so many people have that higher level of stress. They're dealing with that chronic level of stress because COVID took away so much, and it's almost like it's gone now. It's almost like it was a distant memory, but the consequences and what we didn't deal with, whether we were consciously aware of it or not in COVID, would still be stored in your body. So there's a book that's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's such a nice representation of how your body physically stores that trauma, even if mentally you're not consciously aware of it.
And talk to us about how that might be. How might your body keep the score? What might we be experiencing? Because perhaps we don't even know we have PTSD.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So to go back a little bit to your question about symptoms of PTSD, so it would be a lot of avoidance behaviors, not wanting to do certain things. So let's say, for example, you had been hijacked in a certain area. You would avoid that area, even if it meant taking a 45-minute detour. You would avoid that at all costs. There's a lot of intrusive thoughts. There's a lot of flashbacks, nightmares. There's this general level of panic that comes along with it. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? So that when I explained that when something stressful happens, it takes our body 4 to 6 weeks to work through that, that is an acute stress disorder, okay? So your body will generally resolve it if nothing else is going on and stressing you and bothering you. But if we don't resolve it in that period and it goes into a 6-month or more period, then we start looking at a post-traumatic stress. So you don't have to be a war veteran to experience post-traumatic stress. It can be any stress that you have been exposed to, that you've witnessed. And what's interesting, the diagnostic criteria says real or imagined. Okay. What was also quite interesting, when there was that explosion at the hospital a year and a bit ago, more of the people that were traumatized weren't necessarily the first responders or the people on site. It was the people who watched the videos of the explosion. So you can get tertiary trauma. Okay, you can get vicarious traumatization. So even by watching something on TV, that can prompt something in your brain that goes, hey, that was really, really dangerous. And then all of a sudden you feel panicked, you feel wound up. So how your body keeps the score, for everybody it's different, but you would have headaches, you would be grinding your teeth, you would have digestion problems, you would have a lot of stomach problems. We're seeing a lot of acid reflux, heartburn, those kinds of things. So you would start seeing sleeping issues as well. So some people have chronic pain as well. So I'll give you a quick story about chronic pain. There was a lady who had chronic pain in her hand, and there was no medical reason for it. She had gone through every test, and she went to somebody to be counseled and to help her through. And he said, well, tell me what's different in your life. So she was in America at the time, and they were moving back to London. So he said, so tell me a bit about London. And she said, well, when I was there, I was in an accident in a taxi. It rolled, but I mean, I wasn't hurt or anything. And the moment she agreed that she was going to move back to London, her hand started with that chronic pain because she actually braced herself in the accident with her hand. And she didn't register that she had hurt herself, but her brain associated London with danger, and that chronic pain came back up. So that's how powerful your brain is, and that's how your body keeps the score.
Her body kept the score?
Yeah.
It's crazy, hey? Can I just quickly, just like a little short left? You mentioned about information, tertiary trauma. Do you think social media and like these videos that go around on WhatsApp, all the info that we get exposed to that we normally wouldn't, like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago,
Yeah, that's right.
we didn't see as much of the trauma of the world because like we didn't see it. But now it's in our Instagram feeds, it's in our Facebook feeds, it's on our WhatsApp. What role do you think that's playing?
So I promise I won't get on my soapbox for this. I don't love social media. I think because also you're witnessing it. Even first-person shooter games, people who game, I don't want to pick on you, but it can also have an impact on your level of anxiety. And it's something that we do see in practice. And I say to people, do you play first-person shooter games? And they say yes. And it's because your brain, again, is imagining that is actually really happening. And it's sending those signals. So by watching all of these videos, I'm not sure if you feel the same thing, but there's almost like a disruption in your spirit when you're watching it. And I think it's unhealthy. And also we're watching this before we're going to bed. So we're dysregulating before we go to bed. We wake up, we are dysregulated, and then that's how your day continues.
Sure. No, thank you.
Just if you don't mind me, I've got a small child, so I'm going to go here. First-person shooter games, for those of us with small children. Talk to us about what that means.
Okay. So it would be a game where you would be the person who has to go and hunt somebody else. You would be the person shooting. You would be the person throwing the tear gas, things like that. So if your child wants to game, then let them play a game like racing or a strategy game or something like that. But you are shooting this person. The graphics are supposed to be very, very good. I don't game. But you are the person who is shooting. You are the person who is in the war, who is doing all of that.
And so you're saying that can cause anxiety? Yes. Okay. Wow, that's crazy. You mentioned something, I just want to pick up on it, that COVID took away our support structures. Yeah. Talk to us about that. What are those support structures? Because we keep encouraging people to, move back to community. I know community would be one, and because we withdrew. Can you talk about a couple more? Are there more?
Yes. Okay. So if you don't mind.
No, go first.
I'm going to ask you to please hold my shot. And I'll go into a little bit of what the next question is also going to be. So this will be sent on WhatsApp for you guys. I will send things for you guys. But if you can see the bottom over here, in our polyvagal theory, so we all have a vagus nerve. So it is in your brain, and it's your longest cranial nerve that we have in our body. And what it does is it actually wraps into every part. So it wraps around our heart, our stomach, it goes into our digestive system. So our vagus nerve is really, really important. And when we're looking at the polyvagal theory, it's a lot of trauma. This is also where your body is storing the trauma, okay? So I'm not going to go into too much science because I said I won't get carried away. But when we go through anything that is stressful or trauma, so for example, I'll use something that won't really happen. So if you are in an airplane crash, okay, the first thing that your brain will tell you to do is cry out for help. Okay, so you are crying out, help me, people are coming, people will then come to your rescue. That is the theory, okay? So if that is met, okay, then your brain goes back into that safety mode, okay? So I'll give you a different example. If you are in a bumper bashing and then you phone your family, and then as soon as they arrive and you realize you're safe, you'll start shaking, which is actually quite a good thing, okay? It's your body releasing all of that stress, and then you'd feel calm because you're engaged, you feel safe again, okay? And that is the social connection that we're looking for. When that fails, okay, if you scream out for help and nobody comes to you or nobody's helping you, that is not an option. Your brain will go into fight and flight, okay? So the fight and flight response in the airplane accident example is you would either try and fight your way to get out of the wreckage, or you would try and run away from the wreckage to get as far away from it as possible, okay? I'll tell you what this looks like in our everyday life as well. If that is not available to you, your body will go into freeze, okay? So this is what we also call collapse, all right? So everything slows down, so when a car if you guys drive fancy cars, when the engine is compromised, the engine will go into limp mode. So you can drive, but you're driving at about 40 k's an hour. Okay, and that's what your brain is doing. It's slowing every other system down, and it is only prioritizing your heart, your livers, and your kidneys, because that's what you need to survive. Okay, and then we wonder why we're not happy. Okay, so in our everyday life, so in the airplane accident, you would just sort of freeze, you would not move, and your brain's going, just wait until the threat is over, and then you can start coming out of it again, okay? So social engagements in our everyday life is, if I have a problem, I can phone my friend, I can send her a 49-minute voice note and speak it through, and then she engages, she helps me out, she talks to me, and then I feel good, or I get a hug from somebody, or my husband squeezes my hand, and just that connection, okay? So then I'm engaged, I'm safe, I'm protected, okay? If that doesn't happen for me, okay, fight and flight in our everyday life, okay, it looks like being annoyed because somebody isn't turning when there's a flicker to go when you're supposed to be turning, okay? It looks like becoming really snappy with your family members. It looks like getting really grumpy and really annoyed because you have to stand in a queue at Woolworths when you have a million other things that you need to do, okay? And flight looks like your panic, your fear, your anxiety. And it also looks like running away from a situation. So avoiding things altogether. I know that I need to do these 5 things to prep my meeting, but I'm not going to do that. I'm rather just going to leave and do something completely different, okay? And we can't live in that because it's an activation. You are hyper aroused. So you are more aware of the dangers that are going on. And if that is not fixed or sorted out, then you go into this, I can't. Okay, and you go into this shutdown mode. Okay, so physically what this looks like in your freeze mode, so you restore our fuel. So if you're wondering why you've gained weight, then that's why. Okay, so your endorphins, our body has a natural opioid system, which is our endorphins, which kill pain and also make us feel happier, okay? But now that system isn't working properly, okay? And it decreases your heart rate, your blood pressure, your temperature, so you may be really, really cold, your muscle tone decreases. So people here think they're super flexible and it's amazing, but it's not, you're in freeze, okay? Not such a good thing, okay? In fight and flight, your blood pressure is high, your heart rate is high, so your doctor may have put you on medication for that. You'll have constant adrenaline, so you always have that feeling of being on edge. And then again, here your immune response decreases and your digestion decreases. So we're seeing IBS here, we're seeing that you're getting a lot of colds and flus, or you might be getting cold sores, things like that. But in social engagement, everything in your body returns back into a homeostasis. So your body is working the way that it needs to work. So if we can have social engagement, we are open, we are compassionate to others. I also like this because it gives you a brain break. Thank you. No, you can pop it down, thank you. So I like social engagement because it gives you a brain break. So no matter how hectic your day has been, if you can talk a little bit of nonsense about how terribly your football team is doing, it just activates a different part of your brain, which gives this part that's been carrying the load a little bit of a break. So as humans, we need social connection. God very specifically created Eve for Adam because we need companionship and we need to be connecting. So whether it's having a coffee with a friend, even if it's a voice note, I don't even mind that. If it is coming to a connect group, if it is being part of a community like a church like this, we need to be connecting with one another. I always say that I have a job because society fails people, because we don't listen and we don't care for one another. So if I'm telling you my story, it often turns into, oh, but my uncle's aunt's friend did that and then that was absolutely fine. But let me tell you about my day, okay? So we fail one another and we don't just listen. We don't just allow a person a space, and that's the social engagement that we're looking for. So we just want that space of, I can hold whatever is going on. You don't need to fix it, don't need to do anything. There isn't a golden sentence for anyone, okay? The only way out is through. So if we can just listen to people, I mean, I wouldn't have a job, but I'd be grateful because we'd have a much better world, okay? So that's the kind of social engagement that we're looking for.
You want to go? No.
Yeah.
Thanks. So you know, to Ken's point, COVID removed so much of that, which is so necessary for us, whether we're introverted or extroverted. It's not necessarily the quantum of social engagement, it's the fact that it's happening at all. Yeah. Could we sort of shift to the statement you made when we were preparing anxiety and depression love each other?
Yes.
And could you just talk to us a little bit about that? We've spoken a bit about generalized anxiety and the different paths of that, but let's talk about anxiety and depression and how that all works.
So anxiety and depression, I always say they love each other. So if one's invited to the party, the other one's coming, whether they had an invite or not. So the reason that I say that is because we describe it as a comorbid disorder. It's very difficult to say which one started and which one. I'm going to say this very poorly, so if anyone else is in the psychology field, please understand where it's coming from, but it's almost as though one develops as a poor coping mechanism to help you cope with the other one, okay? So, for example, if I have anxiety, for example, let's say I have a panic attack in Edgar's, okay? Then my reference point is Edgar's is dangerous. I must never go there again, okay? So then I get in my car and I go to the mall and then I remember that Edgar's is dangerous, but what if the rest of the mall is dangerous? So then I get to the entrance and then I leave. That's my reference point. Then I get into my car and I'm going, okay, I'm going to go to the mall. And then I go, no, but I mean, it was dangerous the last time also. So now I don't get out my car, okay? So eventually your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which is what happened in COVID, and then you're too scared to leave your house. So I'm sure many people would relate to this, that when the lockdowns were lifted and you had to start driving on highways again, or maybe driving further distances, there was this fear that was associated with it because we had such... And again, the social media and the images and the information that we were being fed was so scary. It was like, if you breathe in, you're going to be infected and everything is terrible, you know? So there would have been that level of fear going back into your everyday routine. So what happens then is you go out less and you engage less and you start doing less. And now our mood is decreasing because we're not doing the things that we would normally do that would release our serotonin, okay? To be fair, when we are at home not really doing much, we're not really prioritizing our veggies and our fruits and let me eat healthy while I'm at home, okay? Everybody made banana bread, so I'm going to give you the bananas out of that. But we didn't eat very well in COVID, okay? And 80% of the serotonin, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter, it's the one that regulates our sleep, our appetite, our mood, our motivation, all of that. 80% is made in your gut. So if your gut is unhappy, then you're not making enough serotonin. If you're not making enough serotonin, then you are feeling like you have a low mood, okay? Now, my mood is low. I don't want to go out. So I've been in for so long. Now I'm scared to go out. And that anxiety develops. And that is that comorbidity that we speak about.
And it just spirals. The one informs the other, which informs the other. Wow, it's crazy.
You made a comment to me when we were talking about that, and I think you specifically wanted to reference neurotransmitters and hormones, like helping us understand that anxiety, depression, they actually have their roots in physiological realities in our lives. So just, will you talk about that? Hormones, neurotransmitters, how they affect us, how they cause this?
So I'm going to throw out a whole bunch of neurotransmitters, which isn't going to be very exciting for anyone, but then I'm going to speak in English, okay? So we have our neurotransmitters, which is our dopamine, so those are our reward paths. We have norepinephrine, we have our serotonin, which I explained to you. Norepinephrine is also like sort of your get up and go, helps you to concentrate, things like that. So and then we have our GABA. So GABA is really important, but also people are too scared to go there, okay? But GABA is also made in your gut. So I'm going to speak to you about the 3 nervous systems that I speak to my clients about when we're dealing with trauma, anxiety, stress, depression. So the first one is your central nervous system. So that is your brain and your spinal column. So that vagus nerve that I was talking to you about, that's coming from your brain, okay? Your amygdala, which is in your limbic region of your brain, so sort of the middle part of your brain. It's small like a little almond, okay, and it makes a lot of trouble, okay? So that is where a lot of our traumas are stored. So when we're working with PTSD, a lot of times we refer to the amygdala, okay, or your amygdala, depends on how fancy you want to sound, okay? So That is the brain component. Then we have our autonomic nervous system, which we split into two sections. So we have your sympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic comes from the word emotion. Okay, that's your fight and flight. Okay, so that is where you need to get up, you need to go, your breath is quite shallow. And then we have our parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, that splits into two as well, but we're not going to get complicated. The simple thing that I need you guys to know is that this is where you go into your calm, your rest and digest. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to activate that in a moment. And then we have our enteric nervous system, which is your gut. Okay, so your gut is 9 meters worth of pipe, okay, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong in there because we're not nourishing ourselves properly, we're not looking after our body properly, and we have the brain-gut combination. So if your gut is unhealthy, it's not producing the GABA that you need, it's not producing the serotonin that you need at the levels that you need it at. So these are neurotransmitters, but they're actually made in your gut, okay? So they call your gut your second brain, okay? And oftentimes in anxiety-related disorders, we see a lot of IBS, we see a lot of bloating, a lot of discomfort, and then again the one informs the other. So my brain is not healthy, so if you think about writing an exam, or if you are into sports and you have a race or something like that, your tummy can run, or you cannot go at all, okay? And that's sort of just that nervousness, okay? But now can you imagine that every single day, okay? So if your brain is not functioning and coping the way that it should, your body tells you. Okay, if we ignore that, then that's then going to send that same signal back to your brain. Okay, so the important thing that I want you guys to know is the most important, simple, and effective, and probably frustrating skill I can give you is breathing. Okay, so for little children, I like to tell parents to use bubbles, okay, because you need to breathe softly when you blow bubbles, and you need to breathe out long to breathe bubbles, okay? So with our breathing, okay, so like I said to you, our heart can send messages to our brain, okay? When we breathe and we are panicked, we breathe like this. Would you agree? Okay? Or we hold our breath, okay? That is sending a message, activating your sympathetic nervous system, and your heart's going, no, we're pumping too much, we're in trouble, send the fight and flight soldiers, okay? So we want to override that, okay? So we want to breathe out longer than what we are breathing in, okay? So that will slow down your heart rate, it will slow down your blood pressure, and it will send a message to your brain saying, so your brain's going, oh, we're in trouble, but your heart's going, no, we're fine. And then it's not releasing that cortisol and adrenaline. So the technique that I like to use to start off with is a 2-4 breathing. There are many different breathing things, but if you are overwhelmed, do not hold your breath. Do not breathe and then hold and breathe out. It's not going to help you. You're going to overwhelm yourself, okay? So you breathe in for 2 counts and out for 4 counts, okay? That's why I'm so regulated, because I speak so much. So it's my out breath all the time.
Did you just say that people that talk a lot are well regulated?
Absolutely. Our parasympathetic nervous systems are perfect.
So there's people with their
There are
hands
some
up.
people
They're
that
like,
would-
look at me, yeah, they're at the back over there. Yeah. They're identifying with you.
So I joke, but even something like humming or even blowing into a balloon, it just gives you a visual representation of what your breath is doing. And if you can slow that down, you'll feel dizzy in the beginning because it's strange. Your brain's like, whoa, what is this? Okay, but it will help your brain register safety, and that's why we breathe out longer than we breathe in, because it's sending that signal of safety, and our brain hasn't known safety for a couple of years. So if we just slowly do that, then it calms everything down. It sounds so simple, but again, God made us, He knows the mechanics, so we just need to follow that.
Yeah. So you're going to teach us a practice in a few moments. Can I maybe just one sort of final comment, and that is maybe theologically, like just as a counselor, you're a Christ follower, you're a Christian, you're a very devoted follower of Jesus. How do you think about the stuff theologically as you counsel people? You know, what should we be aware of theologically when it comes to our mental health?
So I think the first thing is don't shame. Okay, don't shame yourself for asking for help. Don't struggle. Don't battle. Jesus is referred to as a counselor in the word as well. So I do believe that we need to follow the example of Jesus and the life of Jesus and do what he did to help us. And he was a counselor. He did listen. So I do believe that he has anointed people to help and to take the burden, share the load. So please don't shame yourself into seeking help. Please don't think somebody's going to ask you to lie down on a couch and ask you how that makes you feel. That's not what we do. But it's just from a theological point of view, if you pray about it and you do feel like this is where God is leading you. So I was telling Pastor Byron that I prayed for a different job, and then God gave me a lot more work. So I understand that this is where I need to be. But that's exactly it. God has anointed people. He has blessed us with the science to be able to understand what is going on and to correct how busy our lives have been, how we have been drawn away from him, which causes a lot of this. But don't be shamed. Go and get help. If you need help, there are people who are anointed to do exactly that. So if you need help, don't suffer. It's not necessary, and it's not the life Jesus died to give us. So get help if you need it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I think a big takeaway, which you're going to kind of reinforce now in this practice, big takeaway for me is how we are connected. Our brains and our bodies are connected. Our brain is physical, physiological, and just like our bodies need care, our brains need care. And our brains are not separate to our emotions. Our brains inform our emotions. And so we're all tied together. Hey? So like when the psalmist says we were knit together, it's not just our body. It's not just that your arm was knit to your shoulder. It's that your soul was knit to your mind, and your mind was knit to your body. And,
So good.
we're connected, and every part of us affects every part of us. Yeah. So would you lead us in this practice? Do you mind?
Yes, I will. So because I have a mic, I'm going to have to ask
Yeah.
both of you to demonstrate
Cool.
for me first. So while we're getting settled, this activity that I'm doing creates resiliency in the brain. It settles down the amygdala that I was speaking to you about. I don't know if the lighting people can dim a little bit, if you don't mind. And this just takes a few minutes. So you could do this just before you go to sleep. It creates delta waves in your brain, which is the lowest frequency brain wave that we have. So it's restorative, it is relaxing, it is calming. So the practice is called affirmational havening. Okay, so to create delta waves, there are 3 parts of our body that we can touch that will settle us and bring about those calming delta waves. So it is the palms of our hands. Okay, so you will just rub those together. Okay, so some people try and rub like this. Okay, that's not calming. So just like that. Okay, all right. And then we go from the top of our shoulder down to our elbow. We don't stroke up, we only stroke down, okay, on both sides, okay. I only have one hand, okay. And then you go from your face. So from your forehead, you can go down to your cheek, you can go down to your chin, okay. And those are our 3 touches, okay. If you think about it, when you're stressed, when you're nervous, when you're worried, you normally fiddle with your hands, or you touch your arm, or you sort of think, what am I going to do, okay. Your brain is already telling you what it needs. Okay, now we're just putting it into practice. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to I'll give you the breakdown of what we're going to do, and then I'm going to talk you through it. So this creates resiliency in your brain, which means it helps your brain to bounce back. Okay, and it's going to help you to better be able to regulate yourself and manage your stresses. So I'm going to ask you guys to close your eyes throughout the process. And I'm going to give you a few words, but when you do this at home, you can choose any words that you feel comfortable with. So I'm going to ask you to imagine a time that you have felt peaceful, calm, grateful, and loved. And if you can't connect to that feeling, I want you to imagine in your body what it would feel like to be peaceful, calm, grateful, and loved. And when you have this in your mind, I want you to start rubbing the palms of your hands slowly together, and I want you to repeat out loud the words, I am calm, I am peaceful. I am grateful. I am loved. I am calm. I am peaceful. I am grateful. I am loved. I am calm. I am peaceful. I am grateful. I am loved. I want you to move the touch to the top of your shoulders, down to your elbows. And now we're just going to throw away our am and we are going to use the words loved, peaceful, calm, grateful, calm, peaceful, grateful, loved, calm, peaceful, grateful, loved. I want you to move the touch to your face, and I want you to all imagine a beautiful color that you would associate with these words. And as you breathe in, I want you to imagine this beautiful color lighting up your brain, allowing that peacefulness to flow from your brain down your neck to your shoulders, releasing any and all tension. I want you to follow that color down your arms, up to the tips of your fingers, leaving you feeling peaceful in those areas. And as you breathe in, I want you to breathe in and imagine this color filling your lungs with gratitude. And I want you to follow this beautiful color while you're still doing the havening touch on your face. I want you to imagine this beautiful color as it goes down to your legs, and you can feel that love, that calm, the peacefulness and the gratitude. And as you imagine it's lighting up each part of your body, I want you to breathe this beautiful color out and breathe it to a beautiful bubble outside of you. And in this bubble, you can see the calm, you can see the peace, you can feel the love, you can feel your gratitude. And as you breathe in, you are breathing in this feeling of calm, this feeling of peace, this feeling of love, this feeling of gratitude. It is within you and it surrounds you. It is wherever you are. So I want you to take a few more moments to repeat the words peace, loved, grateful, calm. You can take a few moments, and when you are ready, you can open your eyes.
It's very hard to lead when you're feeling so chilled now. I got nothing for you.
Well, I've got something for you. Yeah, as Nicole was speaking, I really felt a strong impression from the Holy Spirit that just a reminder that God is our healer. And He's not just the healer of our bodies, but He's the healer of our minds, and He's the healer of our souls, Jehovah Rapha, our healer. And He's here. And there are things that we can do practically. We can go for help, and let's not shame. We can seek out help, but also we can go to our Heavenly Father God. And the Holy Spirit is here, and I believe that He is present tonight. We craft these things with the intention of, hey, the people in the room, God, come and meet the people in the room. And I believe that the Holy Spirit is here. And yes, you might need some help after this, but the Holy Spirit is here, and He can touch, and He can heal, and He is good, and He is kind, and He wants the wholeness that Nicole spoke about, the wellness. It's an invitation that is available to each of us. And the world that we live in, it doesn't set us up well for wholeness and wellness. We know that. Our rush and hurry and our busyness, it's as Nicole has said, it's just chronic stress upon chronic stress. And so the important things that we can do is seek help. Go to silence and solitude. Go to our Heavenly Father. And you're in this room tonight, which tells me you're interested in your wholeness and your well-being. And we're going to set up a moment now. I know you want to add something. Where we're going to invite, if you would like prayer for mental wellness, that there's going to be a moment where you can come up. There's going to be a team that are going to pray for you. We're just going to invite the gentle Holy Spirit to do what only He can do, to come and touch and to come and heal in a moment as well.
Yeah, I think it's that Jesus gave us agency as human beings. And what I mean by that is that He enables us, calls us to take action, and to take ownership and to take responsibility. Are you with me? That we're not helpless victims of things, that we can actually decide to embark on healthier ways of living. Every single one of us, and we all need different levels of help in that, but we do have the ability to start and embark on that. And when we do that, we co-labor with God towards our health and our wellness, you know? So we come up and we receive prayer, and we enact some of the things that we've been taught. When somebody's praying for you and the Holy Spirit drops wisdom into your heart to say, dive deeper in that, get help in that area, dive into community, make sure that you're connecting, like Nicole says. We co-labor. I think one of the biggest things that particularly as Pentecostals we can be duped into is we go, the Holy Spirit's going to fix everything. No, He can touch, and we can work with Him towards wellness. Are you with me? And so as we receive prayer, as we receive help in that area, we put the pieces of the puzzle together. And in a moment, God can touch us. And in a moment, somebody in our lives can help us with a word. And in a moment, a community can be encouraging to us and can strengthen us. And you saw it in 5 minutes, those things that Nicole was teaching us, so there's a plethora of ways, there's avenues for change. You with me? We don't leave God out of the equation, but we also realize that we co-labor with Him towards that.
The last thing I want to mention tonight is, some of us have been victims, and life has happened to us. It isn't just busy life. There has been traumas that have caused us to become a victim. But I want to encourage us that that's not a place we need to stay. And I am sorry that has happened, and that life has been difficult, and that trauma has taken place, and that perhaps you were victimized and you were a victim. But we don't have to stay that way. We can invite the Holy Spirit to come and do the healing, and as Pastor Byron said, participate with Him in those invitations. And those invitations might be going to see a counselor or a psychologist or a pastor or just a friend for a coffee. So I'm going to invite the worship team up in this moment. Let's give Nicole a huge round of applause and a massive thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I just want to add one thing. I know that that havening can feel quite silly sometimes, but the word says that there is power of life and death in the tongue, and we mustn't underestimate the power of what we speak and what we profess. So we want to live a powerful God-led life, and we need to be professing that. So when we speak it with our mouth, our brain takes it in as an instruction, and then that will come through in our life. So that is the power of that activity.